Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Mr. Within's Gift podcast. Just to tell you a little bit about how these talks are inspired, they're inspired out of me in certain spontaneous moments when I get certain viewpoints, just kind of like sharing them and recording them. So, the relationship I have with my mind is one that it is always providing me with viewpoints, and some of these viewpoints are noteworthy enough to note down or document and to have it continue on to the next day. So pretty much this channel is my digital notepad of some sort. And so the title for tonight's live stream is Confront the Edge of Your Mind. And so I want to speak about the unknown depths of thought and what a living being's relationship with thought is and how important that relationship is. Because the relationship you have with thought will suggest your fate. Because your decision making will, in some sense, go through that filter of identification you have. So when I say confronting the edge of your mind, this is by far one of the most interesting topics. I find that this is a very traditional approach I'm kind of having. I'm kind of being very old school with this. Right now, what I'm going to say, that I find all dialogue and all language and knowledge can be categorized in three different dimensions. All of it can come to three dimensions. Ones that are relevant to the body, that are relevant to the solid state of things. One that is relevant to the mind, which is relevant to the fluid state of things. And one that is relevant to the soul, which is relevant to the gas state of things. And the reason I use this metaphor of solid, liquid, gas is to show you that your relationship with yourself is your relationship with not just this chemically altering creature, but this creature that through the chemical reactions occurring through its brain, there is a sort of self-awareness provided which grants a mystery of which came first, the chicken or the egg. Was consciousness here first or the body? And so the world will agree, and the mainstream of today in the year 2019 will say, obviously, the body was here. You had to be, physically born before you could be a being. And I find that to be a very interesting statement. But I want to, out of these three, focus on the liquid state of things, the fluid state of things, and in some sense the mind, which to me comes across as a sort of bridge, but also as a river. The mind is a bridge of pretty much your awareness from like outside the box of reality. It is looking into reality, and it is seeing that an aspect of the moment is material, and then it sees that there's a self-reflection upon the moment that seems to be an internal phenomena. That means when I look at something and I close my eyes, but I could still see it in how the statement would sound as like when I can still see it in my mind. So what is that mind? Where's the edge of the mind? Is the mind a shape? And in some sense, the title I've written is a kind of playful approach to this, because the mind is not a tangible thing. It seems to be the impression received of a sort of dynamic function of many dimensions at work to shape a being. That means, like, think of it this way, that a person automatically has the allegiance of every cell in their body that is trying to keep them alive. You see? It is a sort of mentality. So we can say that there's some schools of thought that they say there's no such thing as a mind and there's no such thing as a soul, and so a lot of atheists, Western atheists, they hear these and they're like, yes, yes, I agree, but then they say, no, there's also not a body. And then the atheists are like, okay, you guys went too far. so, so pretty much what I'm kind of trying to say is that we have a relationship with our physical aspect of the moment, which is being us, our body. And then we have a relationship with the awareness we are having of this body and this is happening simultaneously. And so I wondered why they weren't teaching this in school. I find that I was intuitively wondering it, you know, that it's as if this it's not that the teaching curriculum in the greatest schools on this planet is bad. It's nice, but they you see a person can grow internally as much as they can grow externally. When we hear the word wisdom, there's a sort of beauty to that for me. For me, wisdom is not like it's more like a revelation of an innate harmony, rather than a sort of kind of agreement with a certain way a situation should happen. I concluded, and in some sense, I've written in my book, an evolutionary return to nature. It's going to be coming soon to online platforms. But it's a very interesting idea that I kind of realized in my life growing up and just being this human being, just being raised from the dirt, of non existence to the, skies of existence. I felt like the whole educational system of this planet was either scared or embarrassed to acknowledge that there could be greater dimensions influencing our intelligence. And we don't have to make ourselves the center of the world. That's like a lot of people, they're like, science. Like I see a lot of scientists say, wow, science, like if they went to the church and they're like, yo, we're not the center of the universe, we spin around the sun. The church like kind of like, you know, hit back. But then now it's a fact that the earth is not the center of the universe. And so Copernicus and Galileo are smiling in their graves, in some sense, playfully, as I'm saying. But the whole notion is that the same way that there was an extreme factor about thinking, and a new viewpoint is instantly a new dimension. That just look at your life and see your problems. Then the moment you see all your problems, try to distinguish and see how they are problems. Sometimes you find the answer to a problem by looking at the problem in a new way, you know? Now get to the core of this talk, there's a story about Bodhidharma. He's a Buddhist patriarch. He's in meditation one night, and he's a very profound, enlightened being, Bodhidharma. And then this man who's kind of gone through a long journey comes there, and the man waits, and he sees Bodhidharma's gone into this inner kind of sort of samadhi state. He's in this non-stop meditation, not moving, and so it's like days are going by, and this guy's waiting, and eventually one night, kind of Bodhidharma gets out of his meditation, and this man runs to Bodhidharma. He's kind of bewildered because he has this problem. He wants some help, And he goes to Bodhidharma and he says, Bodhidharma, please help me. I have no one on this planet I can go, and you're here right now. You have to help me, please. And Bodhidharma is in this kind of samadhi state. He's in this kind of like, I'm kind of like animating the story here, but he's in some sort of blissed out state, and he's not even acknowledging the guy. He's not seeing beings. He's just being. And so what happens is that guy ends up, this is like, not, guys, I'm not making this up, this is part of the story. That guy cuts off one of his hands, and that was like a sign of loyalty back in the day to get Bodhidharma's attention, and eventually Bodhidharma grants him, like, an audience. And so what happens is that, like, in that moment, the guy looks at Bodhidharma, he says, Bodhidharma, I can't sleep at night, I have a problem with my mind, please pacify my mind. This restlessness can't continue, as if the guy was having such an inner problem that his physical body had become meaningless to him because this problem was so profound. Like he couldn't sleep at night. Like that's a big problem, And so what happens is that Bodhidharma listens to this man. He says, "What's your problem?" The guy says, "Pacify my mind, Bodhidharma." Bodhidharma just, there's a moment of silence. Bodhiyama looks at the man. With utter intensity, he says, okay, I will pacify your mind. But bring your mind in front of me right now. Bring your mind, find your mind, and bring it to me in front of me, and I will pacify it for you. And then the guy is just stunned. He's received an answer that is kind of cracking his reality of what he thought the mind was. And he thinks about it and he realizes the mind is not a thing. And he looks at Bodhiyama and he says, Bodhiyama, I can't find my mind. And Bodhiyama looks at him and says, there, your mind is pacified. And stares into this man as if like, do you see now? Do you see? And the man kind of looks at Bodhiyama. As the story goes, he attains nirvana in that moment. He does see. And what does he see? He sees this ultimate realization that a lot of his problems are abstractions kept alive by attention, and that attention is the god of thought. And when you confront the edge of your mind, you come to the purity of the source of your attention, which is unbound, and no concept can touch it. No religion can make a belief out of it. Nothing can touch the untouchable, and hence why does the untouchable, have a story attached to it. And so for me, it became a war of language, and it's this very insane war of language. So when I say war of language, for me, it's like we're not realizing we're not just 8 billion and growing bodies like people here. We're not just physical bodies. We have minds, and our minds are sort of kind of, I don't know if this is a good way of saying it, but it's like it's a combination and a collection and an amalgamation of various different influences. Just your relationship with your memory suggests your relationship with your imagination. Because I'll tell you, some of the most profound artistic people, you go ask them about their childhood, they don't remember it. And so, like, some New Age people will come and say, oh my God, this being wasn't in his body for most of his childhood and then came into his body. So that's why, like, he got his memories. But Mr. Within would be like, guys, get out of here. Like, honestly, how I would interpret that situation would be that the person, let me tell you this, it's like out of chaos, order arises. Out of all the different information the child receives, the child begins to eventually make conclusions. These conclusions form beliefs prior to the child even having its own beliefs. These are beliefs about its existence through an experiential navigation. And as long as my eyes open, the eternal cannot fall. Do you see what I'm saying? Is that that's the profound thing. It's not that we're just this physical body. It's not that we're just all the greatest thoughts and visions we have. It's not that we're just our ability. It's just that it's all one moment. Everything is happening in one moment. And the more we try to classify chaos, it is like, you know what I mean? It is pretty much just like, I was seeing this kid in this Google talk, like this Korean kid, I forget his name, but he was giving this talk and he was like how his father, like he wanted to be a comedian, and his father didn't, his father was like, what the hell are you doing, kid? Like, we didn't bring you into this country to do this ridiculousness, And so that's the crazy thing. Right? Because that kid felt an urge within himself to go towards a sort of art form, something where he felt like existence mattered in that moment, right? Because you need in order to find, let's say, let's try to answer this playfully. Let's try to answer this question: what is the meaning of life? Okay, before we get to the what is at the edge of your mind. Okay, the purpose of life is to first see life. You got to see it. You got to see what's here. You got to see what kind of world is coming across you. Once you see this world, you will begin identifying patterns that develop through intelligence. So you can just go sit in a Starbucks and eventually, like, let's say you're like this person like who's never been to a coffee shop in your life. You just go in there, you go sit down somewhere, and you begin to look around and you begin to see people are lining up at the cashier. Do you see people have a certain etiquette? There's cup holders, all this stuff, And so you begin receiving out of that reality by acknowledging and observing patterns. So the first 25 years of the child's life, you have to become a professional observer of existence. After 25 years of life, after like one fourth of your life, now you have absorbed and in some sense understood enough patterns to emerge as a new self into society. Because the self that we are in society is never the self we are at home when we are alone. And it's never the self we are that when we are singing in the shower. People don't walk as comfortably as they are in the shower outside. Some people do because for them, like there's no longer a game. But anyways, what I'm trying to get to, civilization better not and dare not destroy itself in one night when it's taken itself billions of years to be here. Let me tell you this advice, and it might not come across gentle, but my intentions are kind. Any person who is thinking about a sort of suicide or kind of using a bridge in a wrong way, as I say, let me tell you, you have then not seen, you have then not truly seen the value of existence, that it took us so long to evolve and to have the technologies we have now. Humanity is the science project that must continue. It must continue because it's the coolest thing ever. Like for me, like I'll be honest, I was never like this, like a super cool kid in my life. Like in situation, I was just kind of like a quiet bystander. You know, but I'll tell you that I have had some experiences that have shown me it's worth living. And after you've lived for something, after you've lived for an objective, you will begin living for what I like to use in a new context, a subjective. You begin wondering what is the value of knowledge when everything is kept by the unknown. We are a rock in the middle of nowhere, for God's sakes. We must immediately kind of create where, like, as if a core of our civilization, a majority of our civilization at the center of it, is designing. Everybody becomes a designer of sorts, and they begin designing this kind of vast game that every human being can be part of, and not a game like a virtual digital game. A kind of effort, a kind of mission to advance the species beyond its limits instantly. Because that's when purpose and passion comes in, when there is something to live for, and when there's more than something to live for. That's honestly a heavy statement, more than something to live for. My relationship with thought is that the more I become still and silent, the more thoughts go away. When I don't do anything, when I don't do any meditation, nothing, I'm just still and silent, I go into just this automatic state where there's no thought. Because this is a crazy theory I'm going to tell you. It shocked me when I kind of conceptualized it, extract this concept out of that moment. But I'll tell you, like, guys, I have this theory that thought is not just based on the brain. It's based, like, when you think, you're actually speaking, and there's a tiny oscillation happening in your throat that you don't see. It's too subtle, but when you're thinking a lot, you're kind of speaking. Thinking is speaking. I'm telling you. But you don't, it's like your mouth is closed and there's just a tiny vibration of your voice box where only if you're subtle and super still you might perceive it. As you transcend a world that has been filled with meaning through language, you come to the world of experience, direct experience. And the world of direct experience, there's nothing anybody can say about it. It is how your eyes journey into the void of the unknown through all that you know. The unknown depths of thought is a presence of an attention that comes across as this singular observer that is watching change. There's a part of you that has been watching yourself grow from your birth to however old you are as a being now. That seems to be a timeless witness. And this is where yoga becomes significant, but I consider that there's more than yoga. Yoga just means union. You got to wonder about why should human beings think about union? Is because this power of the spirit is allowed. The karmic potency just tremendously expands. That's the power of leadership. It aligns the karmic lines of all those beings who are in that situation to one purpose, and immensely, as if like 5 universes. Imagine you're 5 people, you have to lead 5 people in some sort of military situation. You begin to see it's like you all have the same intention, and as if 6 universes are looking at the same result, and so they will achieve it. That is the power. That is the power of attention, focus, and concentration, because it brings the future to you. And karma just can't do anything about it. Karma doesn't exist at that point. Karma exists only for individual beings. If you notice, collective beings can't have karma. Multidimensional beings can't have karma because they will be influenced by the karma of many worlds. So what world are they in? And this is the question. Is a time traveler in that moment where the time traveler is traveling from one time to another time, in that journey of some sorts, is there a sort of timeless moment that's kind of being accessed? I find that it is now time for the artists, the poets, the philosophers to join communities of science and try to, any sort of scientific theory, just create their own philosophical interpretation of it. We want ideas to just stretch and expand and extend. We need a leadership of minds. Excuse me. There's this ancient Zen story of a warlord. This warlord decides to kill all the monks should be killed. And so this warlord just pillages like different villages, just killing monks, and all the monks freak out, especially the younger monks, and they all go hide in the mountains. You know, except in one village where this warlord is just walking to check up on the progress, one of his generals comes up to him. He's like, "Sir, there's this like old monk sitting on the lawn of this monastery, and we told him you're gonna die, old man, but like he doesn't move, and the guards don't want to kill him because they don't want to kill an old man, something like that. I don't know. Probably like you could kind of like dismiss the last part. But anyways, the warlord gets angry. The warlord's like, "What?" And he just goes there and he sees the monk, and he just shouts, "Monks, come here!" And the monk stands up and walks up towards the warlord. And then there's this point where the army of the warlord and his generals, right, like are just there, and the warlord goes there and looks at this monk, and he's so angry. He's held the grip of his sword like just with such intensity, and he looks at the monk with this rage, and he says, "Do you know who I am? I can have my sword in your stomach in an instant." With like hatred, he says. And the monk is just there very peacefully. And then the monk smiles, and the monk says very gently and gracefully, as if he's been undisturbed from the beginning that he stood up. He says, "And do you know who I am? I can have your sword in my stomach in an instant." And the monk just smiles, fearless, just eternal. The monk stands in front of this warlord as eternal being, looking at this warlord and saying, "Buddy, you are conquering sand castles. I have realized the eternal." Like that kind of like impression to the warlord. And the warlord just like, he just gets stunned. He gets shocked. And like, I don't know what happens rest at the end. Probably they kill him, because the warlord's nature is cool anyways. Like, I don't know what happens at the end of the story, but that's the end of the story, right? And that's the moral of it. And so I find that my relationship with this whole war of language thing that I was telling you, that as you confront the depths of your mind, you begin to see that your memories are classified by the dialogue that was found in in different moments. And once you shift your relationship, and in some sense how you have created an axis and postulated kind of language into a certain relationship with yourself, you begin to see language is like the source of creativity. You understand how language moves. You have understood how the mind projects. And so uh, the implication is that we need to forget inferior games and find superior games. And superior games are games in society and in civilization that they lead towards more of an influence of the advancement of the whole thing. We want to play as much as we can before our time runs out in this universe. I don't think you're a human being unless you care about humanity. You care about your species. If you don't care about your species, then I don't understand why you're like calling yourself a human. Go in the forest and live like a inferior creature. Because humanity, that is a name that has been reduced to errors and mistakes of blind men. Humanity will be the greatest vision of those who will open their eyes in this world and realize it's not the first time. And so greatness will pursue itself towards the clarity and the purification of our dimension. That means, like, this is a bold thing I'm saying, but imagine, like, this is what Mr. Within is kind of like saying. I guess let me be the first person to bring it up. I find that this dimension, like, let's say if it is dimension and if reality is 0.001% chance, like whatever amount of zeros you like, 1% chance, like multidimensional. That means if there are other dimensions, then this box we're in, we want to purify it. And purity means we find what's valuable and we focus on that. And that seems to be life. We have to protect life. And we have to protect the mind that is making decisions for this life. And that means the mind of the children of the future generations. And even though it's not like, I was like, man, like that's like the Rubik's Cube we need to solve for civilization. How we allow clarity to walk undisturbed in a changing world. I hope this talk has served you. Confront the edge of your mind by realizing that from the beginning to the end, life is the experience of a self-awareness in the moment, in which the self at first is a concept, is an ego, is an I thought. But once you look at it, you realize it is awareness, and awareness is innocent from the beginning. It doesn't do anything. It's just there. You know. God is in some divinity, like is in some sense innocent because it's divine. It can't do anything wrong. you know So one can say if we create a robot that does nothing wrong from the beginning of its existence to its end, is divine. That was a divine robot. There's this very profound quote, I believe it's from Chung Tzu, and I don't remember the exact quote, but in the quote it's saying like, as the seasons pass, acknowledge that your thoughts are like the change in seasons. Thoughts just come and go. They are clouds that come and go. They are like glimpses of reality that come and go. And so, what are you being attracted towards as a living being? You're being attracted towards the greatest unfoldment of your full potential. Your full potential is not just your career. Your full potential is how you are alive in every moment. And so once you become a friend of your moment of being, you will be friendly to all beings, because it doesn't matter who anybody is. Like, we don't realize, but the moment like people meet each other, they are as if entering each other's rooms and worlds, and communication in some sense clarifies the unseen behind the eyes of people. Sri Ramana Maharshi, this very realized yogic sage, he says, meditation is your true nature. And then we see this other very enlightened yogi sage named Swami Shivananda, where he says, surrender all onto God. Something like that. Surrender all your belongings onto God. Whatever you have assumed ownership, allow it to be just gracefully present in a universally intelligent moment of being. Do not doubt the universe that has been intelligent enough to bring you this far. If I am alive, that is for me a celebration. Every moment in some sense is. This idea of this Mr. Within's gift, where I was like, why aren't people in this mindset that it just this ultimate gratefulness for just being here as a creature? To have their eyes open when so many have died and so many have never even come into existence yet to even open their eyes. And we are, in some sense, our attention keeps history alive and, in some sense, updates its patterns. Change yourself, you will change your own world. Then, once you are authentically, like, here's the thing, right? You got to find your real self, then you'll find a real world where you can be in. Your real self is that self that is effortlessly just being you. It is so pure and simple. And in just pretty much mysticism, this was for a lot of people like God. This moment where it's just intelligence is here. That's it. No agenda, no meditation, nothing. But from this purity can arise the greatest vision. I hope this talk has served you. For once you realize you were never a thought, you were never an emotion, you are the whole moment beyond the disguise of an attachment, of an attention. Consciousness reigns supreme, and this is why Satchitananda means conscious existence is bliss. Conscious awareness that existence is here is blissfulness. It is divine blissfulness. It's one of those moments where you're like laugh and cry at the same time, but realize like you have acknowledged both like all dimensions of your being as one moment, you know? As if the mind and the soul and the body classification no longer exists for an experience unbound by its own effort, which is effortlessly just there because it's the universe looking through the eyes of the being. I hope this talk has served you. Much blessings and